All right, and we are back again. I am still recovering, and honestly, I should not be live. I feel sick as a dog. But I have been. Oh my God, you're still discussing Karen Reed? Yeah, I think it's a fascinating case, to be honest with you. Heathen, I may not have the same opinion. When we're talking about real people, real lives, that we don't proclaim that we know what happened. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's okay to like believe that she didn't do it. The way that I've seen some people host lives, you know what? It's a broader issue. A few people have said that they'd like me to do sort of true crime stuff, and I haven't really expressed what my issue with that is. Am I fascinated by true crime stuff? Yes. Do I love to dig into the details of it? Yes. However, I think the problem that I have is there's a moral issue, and the moral issue is whether or not it's appropriate for us socially to be talking about the unaliving of someone so crassly. And I really go back and forth on it. I really do, because socially, we would be talking this around the dinner table. Socially, we'd be talking about this in public. But it's just a little bit different that we're talking about it online. But it's just a little bit different that we're talking about it online where we know that John O'Keefe's mother could flip in and listen in. Do you know what I mean? And so I think that right now I'm straddling the line by talking about it, but at the same time, just not being very, making sure not to be crass about it, and also trying to be respectful of the fact situations like this, I would rather use words like guilty or not guilty rather than innocent and or she did it. Because innocent and or she did it are proclamations of fact, right? Whereas when we're talking about, instead of proclamations of fact, if we talk about guilty or not guilty, what we're really saying is, does the evidence meet the standard? Because I can say that Karen Reed should not be found guilty. I can say that the jurors should come back with a declaration of not guilty, without also saying that she's innocent, without also saying that she's absolutely as someone who did not do this, without saying that she's necessarily been framed, without saying that there's a giant conspiracy. Because the facts are, the amount of reasonable doubt in this case is insane, is genuinely insane. I'm probably going to talk a little bit. Guys, I'm sorry. I'm sick. Give me one moment to mute. I apologize. That was a highly unpleasant personal moment. Apologies for that. So, as I sort of talk about this case moving forward, if you guys have feedback in regard to whether you think what I'm saying is appropriate or inappropriate from an ethical, moral standpoint, I would be very interested to hear people's feedback, because it is an issue I am struggling with. And I very much sort of have the feeling of, God, what is that chap's name? That's what it was. Hey, Katie. Greg Ferguson. Greg Ferguson on late night television. So, for all you people in your early 20s, back in my day, late night television was I don't know, the thing that everyone did. We all would watch Letterman, we all would watch Conan, we all would watch the late night talk show hosts, because that's where we got all of our information. That's where we found the people who talked like us. That's where we got to gossip with the stars because we didn't have social media, okay? And the late night talk show hosts were sort of the key focal point. 60 years ago, it was the only thing people had. 20 years ago, arguably, it was still incredibly powerful, but it started to fraction. And one of the late night gods, in my opinion, was Craig Ferguson. And while you had people like Jay Leno from The Tonight Show, who would very freely mock every and any celebrity out there, Craig Ferguson had a brutal realization during one of his lives where he talked about the fact that he had made his money and his program off of mocking people, and that it was really hurting his soul to realize that the people who he's mocking are real people. And specifically, he did an entire bit where he talked about and tried to sort of like take penance for how it is he talked about Britney Spears, and realizing that all the jokes that people made about her shaving her head, her being crazy, all of that stuff, that to the comments to you guys in the comments when you guys said it's public, we can talk on it. Sure, maybe, but how you talk on it is really important and impactful. And Craig Ferguson, from a moral standpoint, I kind of connect with where he was coming from. I think you have a social responsibility that when you're talking about people, even when they're public celebrities, to realize that they're very real people. And so I do want to be conscious of that, because how some people talk about true crime, I think is really disgusting. And I'm probably guilty of it myself. I've certainly done it in the past, but I don't want to do that. So if you guys catch me on stuff and you sort of think, you know what, that's where it crosses a line. And I want you to think from the perspective of family members who may come into this live. How would they feel when we're talking about these things? Because, I don't know, you can maybe talk about it, but if we do, I just want to make sure it's done right. So for everyone in here, I'm going to take a very quick poll. Give me a smiley face if you are pretty knowledgeable on the Karen Read case. Give me a crying emoji if you don't really know that much or anything at all. So smiley face if you know a decent amount about the facts behind the Karen Read case, and give me crying emoji if you don't know much at all. Holy crap. How do you guys not know about this case? So you guys know about the Casey Anthony case, O.J. Simpson case, John Benet Ramsey case. To me, this is one of the most fascinating crimes that has taken place in modern history, in U.S. modern legal history. And the reason is that the evidence in this case very much does not support the charges. And specifically, let me go through what the charges are. Pardon me. But before I do that, let me see if I have a photo. I don't think I do, which is disappointing, because I have a lot of other photos, but I don't think I bothered to find that specific photo. And what I'm referring to when I say that specific photo, I basically mean a photo of simply John and Karen. I don't think I took one because it wasn't really necessarily relevant. I thought I had one though. I'm just going through my camera. It's a crappy picture, but whatever. There it is. So on your left is Karen Read. I think she's 42, early 40s. And on the right is John O'Keefe. John O'Keefe is 6'2", 220 pounds, Boston cop. John O'Keefe, by all measures, is known as somewhat of a stand-up guy. He is someone whose family member died, and he was the godparent to their kids, and he took guardianship of the children. I personally think that is oversold as sort of suggesting that he's a great guy. Because, most women would do that in a heartbeat. If you're an aunt and your sister unalives, we wouldn't say that a woman is a stand-up woman because of the fact that she took custody of her sister's kids. So he's getting sort of like this vibe that he's like this great guy because he stepped up when basically there was no one else around for kids. And he is someone who was dating Karen Reed for 2 years, which is not very long. Sorry, let me just mute for a moment. I think I'm going to die. And so they were not married. They dated for 2 years, and they fought a lot. They were typical what you'd call massholes. They're from Massachusetts. They're loud, they're crass, they curse, they drink. They're assholes. That's what we call massholes. And Karen and John had a kind of toxic relationship where they'd fight a lot, but nothing physical. There's no evidence of him hitting her or her hitting him. But there was evidence that the relationship was coming to a close. And part of that evidence was that they were bickering, they were fighting a lot. A lot of the fights were around a couple of central issues. One of the central issues was around how Karen treated the children. And what's interesting is the fights seemed to be that Karen treated the children too good. John was of the opinion that Karen was spoiling the kids. And it's not that he had, critiques on that. He would get angry with her, which I just think is weird. The other thing that was tearing them apart, or evidence that they were being torn apart, was there was clear jealousy. And I think there was clear jealousy from both parties' side, but there was also reasons for that. Because as we'll see, Karen here on the left ended up flirting with and somewhat soliciting someone who knew John O'Keefe. So in my opinion, it looked like they were dating for 2 years. There was a lot of fighting. There was disagreement about how to build a family. He was not committing. He was not putting a ring on it. She wanted to know where she was in the relationship. And there was just poor communication all around. And it looked like she was sort of checking out of the relationship. Now, in reading their text messages, she's a masshole. Massholes curse. So when you see her text messages to John, she seems unhinged. But if you know people from Boston, they're just really poor, degraded, pared down versions of Irish people. They just curse a lot because we curse a lot. And I'm pretty sure that's where they got it from. And it's wrong to assume that because they curse a lot that they're more elevated. It's just like their language. That's really what it comes down to. So I don't really think that they were more toxic than other people were, right? So these two were breaking up, or were sort of on the verge of breaking up, right? And they got invited by a group of their friends to go to what is called the Waterfall Bar in Canton, Massachusetts. Karen on the left and John on the right, they arrived at around about 11 p.m. They had already been drinking, and other people in the bar had already been drinking as well. Everyone in the bar was pretty drunk. At the bar was Brian Higgins. At the bar, there were multiple family members who were all connected, who I'll get into more detail tomorrow about. I just want to give the broad overview. And as the night went on, and when I say went on, I'm only talking about an hour or so. After midnight, it started to snow, and they all said, let's go back to one of the guys' house. And they all agreed to go back and meet up at this guy's house at what we're going to refer to moving forward as 34 Fairview. And so at around about 12 or so, there's a caravan of them. Slowly, one by one, they all take cars and drive to Fairview Avenue, which is exactly 5 minutes away. Canton is a very small town, but it's also not necessarily an easy to navigate town. So where they drove to from the Waterfall Bar to 34 Fairview was a little confusing. And we know by text messages and Waze data that they got a little bit lost. But I think I actually have that map prepared. So this is not like my formal review of everything that happened, by the way. I'll be doing that more so later. but I have been getting some of the slides ready, so I might as well start showing some of them to you. Okay, so this one here is the one that we'd be talking about. So this shows the waterfall bar and grill in the middle of the map, and it is a 5-minute drive to 34 Fairview Road. However, it was snowing, it was late at night, and Karen was definitely drunk. And so when Karen tried to get to 34 Fairview, she got a little confused. It took her a little bit longer to get home. When she arrived at 34 Fairview, this is where everything gets heavily disputed. And before we can really talk about what the dispute is, I kind of got to give you like a lay of the land as to what 34 Fairview kind of looks like. So let's do that. Let me pull up some of these photos that show what the house and surrounds look like. So this is the house. Pretty typical looking Massachusetts type house. Large, but not huge by any means whatsoever. If you look where it says number 1 and number 2, those are the 2 entrance doors. We're going to call the one that says 1 as the main front door, and we're going to call number 2 the side door. And then you're going to see A, B, C, and then on the top D. And those are windows. A is the window to a study, which would not have been used for the party. B would have been a view into I can't remember what that was. I think it was also a non-sort of functional room. And C is actually an informal living room. But what's really important is D. Look at D in the top left-hand corner. D is the primary bedroom. And that's really important to note, okay? So B is the primary bedroom. Now, everyone look at 1 and 2, lock it in, okay? Because I'm going to show you the floor plan now. You don't need to take all of this in. If you look in the top left, you see 3 floors represented, okay? In the top left, that's the main floor. And if you see where it says number 1 and number 2, what is that referring to, guys? Number 1 and number 2, right here, that's referring to the doors, right? So the number 1 door is the main door that we referred to. And if you look to the left, the windows are to a study, right? That's what I described. And if you look to the right, the windows are to a dining floor plan. This is the second floor. Oh, sorry, no, this is the basement. This is the basement. And this is really important, okay? Because if John, when he arrived at this house, if he went in, there's a big question about where he went and who saw him. If he walked in to the side door, which is number 2, which is the door that a lot of them use a lot, then it would mean that almost everyone in the house would likely have seen him. Because he would have walked into the living room on the right, then he would have walked through the dining room, then he would have walked through the foyer, probably seen people in the kitchen, and then walked into the kitchen. Now, the alternative view is he walked in number 1, the main door, and he walked up to where it says A. And A is a staircase leading down to the basement. And the guys would sometimes drink down in the basement because there was an exercise room down there. And the theory is that he could have walked in the main door, but scuttled down to the basement via the staircase straight away. We don't know either way. And that is the big point of contention. There is almost no dispute that Karen Reed pulled up in her Lexus SUV and parked right outside this house. And there's almost no dispute that she pulled up 3 car lengths to move from the right-hand side where the driveway is to the left-hand side where there's more of a flagpole area. Let me see if I can find that. Yeah, boom, right there. So there is no dispute that Karen arrived in her car, that car right there, that Lexus SUV. Karen arrived at 34 Fairview in that SUV with John O'Keefe in the passenger seat. It is indisputed that Karen Reed first parked where that blue car is. And when I say parked where the blue car is, she did not pull into the driveway. She simply pulled in sort of in front of the mailbox. Does that make sense? So basically, if you reverse back tree car lengths, that's where she would have pulled in originally. Indisputed. It's also indisputed that at some point while she was parked outside, which is disputed how long she was outside, she was either outside for 1 minute or 7 minutes or 20 minutes. But during that time, it is also indisputed that she moved from the mailbox, which is behind the blue car on the right. And it's really important you start understanding these landmarks. The mailbox is on the right, okay? Everyone has to lock in that mailbox. The next marker is the flagpole. So look at where the black SUV is, look at where the red X is, and look slightly to the left of the red X, and you're going to see a flagpole. Okay? So again, really important, mailbox on the right, flagpole on the left, and further left of the flagpole, it's important to note that there is a fire hydrant. And I don't know if I have a photo of that. Yes, I do. Great. This is a crime scene photograph. You can see the flagpole there to the right. Everybody sees the flagpole. It's in between the windows, and it's in between the second and third window to the left. Flagpole is there, and now look at the fire hydrant. There's no blood at all, Mac. None of that is blood. And that's actually part of the problem. There's actually hardly any blood at all. So we've got three main landmarks. Fire hydrant on the far left. Flagpole, sort of in the middle, but to the left of the house. Mailbox. Okay? So it is indisputed that she pulled up to the house and that she parked where the mailbox is, which is number 5 in this map. It's indisputed that she pulled up to approximately where the car is in this photo. Also indisputed. What is disputed is, did John ever get out of the car? I think everyone agrees yes. He had to have. But did he walk away from the car? Karen's narrative is that John walked into the house, and I'm going to give you Karen's spiel. John got out of the car. John walked across the lawn and entered the main door where it says number 1. That she had asked John to go in to see whether or not she, Karen, would be welcome to join. And that John was meant to come right back out again and let her know. And that what happened was that John never came back out, and she waited outside for a solid 5 minutes, during which time she texted him. And John never comes out, and so she leaves pissed off. And when she leaves pissed off, she drives home to John's house at 1 Meadow Avenue. And when she gets back into the house, she starts calling John and leaving horrible voice messages. F you, John, you're an asshole. I don't love you. You're horrible. Very, very clearly angry at John. Okay? And she gets home at around about 12:36 a.m. That's her claim. She then claims she wakes up at 5 a.m., realizes that John is not in bed with her, freaks out, calls up her friend Jen McCabe and another friend, Carrie Roberts. They drive back to 34 Fairview, and lo and behold, they find John O'Keefe where the X is. John O'Keefe is lying with his head facing towards the house and his feet facing towards the curb. He is a solid 5 feet off away from the curb. He is positioned as though he is literally lying down. Legs are straight, hands are to his left and right. It's not that his hands are all over the place. It looks like he literally just lay down and took a nap. And John is found with injuries, which we'll discuss later. And they immediately try to revive John. That's Karen's perspective on what happened. The prosecution's argument is that what actually happened was that Karen pulled up, and when she stopped the car, her and John got into a screaming match in the car. That her and John argued in the car for about 8 minutes. That John O'Keefe then got out of the car, and the prosecution would have you believe that she did a 3-point turn, and in the process of doing the 3-point turn, she drove back at high velocity and got her car to get up to 25 miles an hour and clipped John with her car intentionally. And that he struck the rear left tail light, and when he struck it, he ended up getting his injuries. Now, his injuries, which I'll go into more in detail, included lots of scratches and tears on his left arm, bruises to the front of his fists, a bruised left eye, a cut above his eye, and a serious cracked skull, which is what ultimately unalived him. The coroners and the medical experts generally agree that when he cracked his skull, he was gone. He was absolutely, he was no longer able to be mobile. So that is a really important assertion, because what it implies is once he hit his head, he was out of commission, no longer able to do anything. And what the prosecution would have you believe is, now they've had two different theories. One is the 3-point turn. The other one is where the prosecution claims that she drove forward 60 feet and then drove backwards 60 feet at a high speed, hitting 25 miles an hour and hitting John. Bella, right? So Bella's already getting into the thick of this. Oh my God, Kat knows everything. Kat, I also think Colin and Brian, it's one of them too as well. So we're going to, I know you guys are eager to jump into, wait, how did he hurt his skull and all that? I want to do a deep dive, right? So I'm just giving the overview. So now we understand what has happened, right? What we have right now, again, is a couple, Karen Reed, John O'Keefe. They are at the end of a 2-year relationship. They are going out drinking. At the bar, there's signs that they had a very good time. They arrive at this house, and this is where the prosecution and where the defense splits. Karen Reed says he got out of the car. She waited for him. He was meant to come out and say that she should come in. He never came out. She drove off in a huff, got home, cursed him out, woke up next morning, realized he wasn't here, and felt as though something bad had happened, rushed to this house, found that he was unalived. Whereas the prosecution will say that they had a big fight in the car, waited 8 minutes, and during that 8 minutes, or at the end of that 8 minutes, John got out of the car, and that he waited while she did a 3-point turn into him? Now, Chaotic is bringing up a point that is important, but we're not going to get into like the nitty gritty yet. But she's asking about the timing. The timing of this is all so important. It's so important. So to visualize, by the way, the prosecution's theory of the case and how, I don't know, personally crazy it sounds to me, you have to look at this. Now, 34 Fairview would be down in the comments, okay? 34 Fairview is in the comments. This is an overhead view of Karen Reed in the SUV. Do you see the red balloon at the bottom left-hand corner of the SUV? That is the red taillight, which will become so important in this case. That red taillight is the point of impact with John. That's the only possible point of impact. It's a ridiculous, I think, assertion by prosecution that is the point of impact, but it's their only way of making the case work. Now, you see the purple where it says J.O., John O'Keefe, exits vehicle, right? Their 3-point turn theory is so stupid, it's as if none of them had ever done a 3-point turn. Because this is what they're stating the starting position is. J.O. gets out, Karen Reed pulls up. Now, I want you to look at where J.O. is in comparison to where the red light is, right? And I want to remind you that the house is down in the comments, and I want to remind you that the door is to the left of the comments, meaning John O'Keefe would be walking away from that car, not to the right. He'd be walking more to the left and down. And when she does her 3-point turn, that red taillight, which is the point of impact, would be the furthest point away from where John O'Keefe would be. So basically, when she completes her 3-point magical turn, where she gets up to 26 miles an hour, and she ends up clipping John O'Keefe, he would have had to have walked over to the right for some reason, which makes no sense. And so their whole theory of the case to me is wackadoodle, in my opinion. Let me go over a couple other pictures or scenes to show you. What's really interesting about this is, if you see the red light here, the red balloon representing the red tail light, one of the most crucial pieces of evidence that the prosecution has is the fact that the tail light on Karen Reed's car was apparently broken. So I want you to look at this car. You can see on the right-hand side, it's very clearly broken, right? Everyone sees that? And on the left, there's obviously a complete one. And on the right, it's cracked. It's not cracked. It's broken. And this is really important because some police reports said it was cracked. Some said one piece was missing. Some said it was obliterated. That is just gone, right? Now, there is a really interesting argument about all of this. One of the theories that most people have is that John O'Keefe was unalived in the house, and there is a conspiracy because all the people in the house, I'm not kidding, all the people in the house are connected to Boston PD or are Boston or Canton PD themselves. And so the belief is that this John O'Keefe, Boston cop, was unalived in a cop's house, and there was a giant cover-up to frame Karen Reed for the unaliving. And part of that cover-up, the theory is that when Karen got home, let me pull up the map just to contextualize it a little bit. Right here. So if you look here, bottom left, number 2, Waterfall Bar, she drove exactly 5 minutes from Waterfall Bar to 34 Fairview in the top left-hand corner. Or rather, let me rephrase that. That should have been a 5-minute drive. We know it took her longer because she wasn't familiar with the area and it was snowing. We know that she then drove home from 34 Fairview to John's home, which is in the far right-hand corner, which is meant to be around about 6-minute drive. When she got home to John's home, there's a whole issue with cameras. We'll talk about it later. But she got back to the house. She went to bed. When she woke up the next morning, it is clear as day that when she backs up the car, her right tail light, clear as day, hits the other car. And Karen will say that she cracked the tail light as a result of backing out of her driveway at 5 a.m. However, what the prosecution alleges is that she didn't crack it. She obliterated it on John's arm and or head at 34 Fairview. And they've got a lot of evidence for it. The evidence for it is all of the taillight. The taillight was found scattered all over the place around the area that John's body was found. So that's the flagpole. If you look to the right, that area that looks like there's grass there, that's exactly where John's body was found. And when his body was found, there was no evidence of taillights found. But 8 hours later, after the police have her car in custody, that's really important. After the police have her car in custody, all of a sudden they start finding cracked pieces of taillight, not underneath the body, not on top of the body, but somehow sprinkled all around the body. And critically, look how far away the fire hydrant is away from that flag, because critically, they find little bits of the taillight over here by the fire hydrant. Now, to me, that's sus. To me, that makes no sense at all. Because, first of all, the fire hydrant is not high enough to go anywhere near the back. So people thinking that she hit the fire hydrant, no, I don't think she did at all. And that's certainly not their claim. They can't have that as their claim, because her hitting him with the taillight is their claim, right? But look at the height of that taillight. It's way too high for that fire hydrant. So there's no way it hit the fire hydrant, right? What it shows is, if we're to believe their evidence, right, and if we were to believe their theory, it almost necessarily means that the point of impact happened at the fire hydrant and that John's body got flung 30 feet backwards to the flagpole, or 20 feet backwards to the flagpole. But not only did John's body get flung, which, okay, I can get behind that, but the pieces of the taillight flung with him? And to me, this is where the best evidence of a cover-up is due to the fact that you found pieces of the taillight at the fire hydrant and pieces of the taillight at the flagpole. Ain't no way. Just doesn't happen like that. Now, to me, what this likely means is that the cops planted the evidence. And that doesn't mean that Karen Read didn't do it. But I think it's pretty clear to me that the cops planted evidence in order to make sure it looked like she did it. That's my opinion anyway. Now, there is so much to this case, which is why, I can't do a full breakdown. There's just so much to do. And instead, what I will likely be doing is just looking at the trial and opining on what's happening. But here are some of the things that I do want to key you guys into. that I think are really important. Snow accumulation. I think this is really important. This is a camera that was less than a mile away from where the incident happened. Now, don't get me wrong. Snow falls differently, even if it's only a mile away. But it's the best I've been able to find. And this shows, 2.5 miles away, pardon me. And this showed the snow accumulation as of 1:30 a.m. and as of 7 a.m. And it showed that most of the snow happened later on in the afternoon because his body was found by 6 a.m. And it's really important because when we see photos from the time that the cops arrive, the photos are very, very, very bad images. And there's clearly a snowstorm that's active, but I would argue there was not a lot of snow on the ground. This is not real. Hang on. Let me get a proper photo. Let me get one of the crime scene photos. So that's a good one. So this is one of the crime scene photos right there. Now, let's be super clear. Just look at the fire hydrant. How many inches of snow could that possibly be if the fire hydrant isn't even covered? Now, when we look at the amount of accumulation, I think it's fair to say there was probably about 4 inches, 3 to 4 inches of snow that had solidly fallen by the time his body was found. The reason why this becomes really important is one of the reasons why they all started to blame Karen Reed, allegedly, is because when Karen woke up the next morning freaking out where her boyfriend is, she called up Jen McCabe and she called up her friend Carrie Roberts, and Jen McCabe and Carrie Roberts and Karen Reed drove back to 34 Fairview, and as they pulled into the driveway, both Jen McCabe and Carrie Roberts described Karen Reed as being crazy because she claimed to have been able to see John's body and that she just ran right over to John's body, and they insisted it was impossible to see John's body. Now, I'm confused by this because if there's only 3 to 4 inches of snow, and the average human head of a guy who's his size is at least 9 inches deep, how are you not seeing the outline of a body on the ground? I'm not saying he was very visible, but they're making it sound like he would have been invisible because of the snow. Whereas I think this picture makes very clear that even if the body had snow on it, there would have been a protrusion. There would have been a lump. And so they made it sound like she was insane because she was able to see a body there. I don't think that's insane, personally. Now, let's talk timeline issues. Because, snow is one part of it, but let's talk timeline. Let me where's the prosecution's theory of the case? Sorry, I haven't gotten all my exhibits ready in an organized fashion yet. I'll have it better ready at a later date. Do I really not have the timeline from the prosecutor's standpoint? I guess not. That is... Oh, there it is. I was about to say that is disappointing. Okay. This is the Commonwealth's timeline. And the Commonwealth's timeline is, in my opinion, crazy. Literally crazy. Let's go through it step by step. At 12:12, the ignition in Karen's Lexus goes on. I agree with that one. Okay? I don't dispute that she left the waterfall bar, and that both John and her got in the car, and that the ignition was on as of 12:12. We know that at like 12:18, for example, John contacts Jen McCabe and asks for better directions, which implies that they were already on the way. The next one is truck was coming the other way. This timeline I agree with as well. This is a really important piece of the timeline. When Karen arrived at 34 Fairview, she missed the road. So she drove past the road, did a 3-point turn, doubled back, and when she went to turn onto Fairview, she shined her lights at someone else who was going to the same house, which is great from a timeline standpoint. Nobody disputes that. And that was the car of Ryan Nagel. And Ryan flashed his lights to indicate, hey, Karen, go ahead of me. So Karen at 12:23 is on the street turning onto 34 Fairview, absolutely confirmed. She turns onto 34 Fairview. Ryan Nagel follows right behind her. Okay? At 12:24:34, Karen and John arrive at 34 Fairview. And that's about right. That is the Waze data. So their Google Maps data shows their final arrival at 12:24:34. I'll accept that timeline. This is where it gets weird. Because Karen will say John got out of the car at around about 12:25. And that she was waiting for John to keep on coming back out. And he just never came out of the house. So at 12:25, Karen simply says John got out of the car. That's not what everyone else in the house says. And Jen McCabe is one of the key people who say that John never got out of the car. Because you'll notice at 12:27 it says John gets a text from Jen McCabe here, question mark. I agree with that timeline. And I also think that when Jen McCabe sent that Karen Reed was still outside. And I think at that point that it's unclear whether or not he has gotten out of the car. I don't know if he's gotten out of the car or not. Okay? But at 12:29, Jen texts again, are you coming in? Now, that was a mistake by the Commonwealth because it was a phone call, not a text. Jen claims it was an accidental butt dial. And there's so many accidental butt dials in this case, it's crazy. It is really important to note that Jen testifies that at 12:29, Jen looks outside and sees the Lexus in front of the flagpole. I think that is possible. Under the evidence as I view it, I personally think at 12:29, Karen Reed pulled away from this house and that she arrived at home at 12:36. And I'll explain my reasoning for that. So from now on is where I start to call bullshit. Okay? At 12:29:33, it says truck leaves 5 minutes after arrival. Ryan Nagel. This is true. Ryan, as I said, intersected with Karen as they were both turning onto the road. His testimony to me is super important. Ryan was pulling up to the house to pick up his sister, Julie Nagel. Ryan was in a car with 2 other people. That's a lot of witnesses, right? One was the driver. He was in the passenger side. And behind the driver was another woman. When they pulled up, they claimed that they pulled in. Let me pull up the photograph. When they pulled up, they claim that they pulled in. I'm trying to find, an overview photo. Where the hell did that photo go? Sorry, guys. Is it his one? Yeah, this is, oh, perfect. Okay. They claim that they pulled the car in so that the nose of the car was to the right of the mailbox. Okay? And they claim that at 12:24, Karen was right in front of them. They claim that Karen was right in front of the mailbox and they pulled in right behind her. They claim that at some point in the 5 minutes that they were there, Karen moved from the mailbox up to the flagpole. Karen agrees with that. Karen says she did that because she had dropped John off and was waiting for John to come out and confirm that she should come in or not. What's interesting, though, is that as they're waiting for Julie, the sister, to come out of the house, notice where they would have been, their attention would have been directed, right? If they're to the right of the mailbox and the door that Julie is coming out of is door number 2, which is the middle door, which is the one right beside the driveway, that means that when Julie opened the door, they would have all been looking 90 degrees to the right. Is that clear to everyone? Right? Even though they're right behind Karen, their attention would have been 90 degrees away because they would have been looking at the house up the driveway, whereas Karen is directly in front of them. And so they said that they never saw anyone exit Karen's car. But why would they? They wouldn't have been looking at her car, so why would they notice if someone got out of her car? So to me, the fact that they never saw anyone get in or out of the car is irrelevant. What is very relevant is that at 12:29, they drove away. And that's because Julie said that she's staying. So Julie went back into the house and the three of them drove away. As they drove away, Ryan Nagel, who's in the passenger seat, and the passenger seat, as a reminder, is the seat that is closest to the side of the road, right? He is literally the closest to the house. As he's driving by, he says that he watches as Julie goes into the house as they slowly pull away. And Ryan claims that as they slowly pull away, that they pass Karen Reed's car. And as they pass Karen Reed's car, he is looking through the car in order to keep an eye on his sister walking in. And as he looks through the car, he says he sees a middle light on so that the interior cab is fully lit. He also says that he clearly saw a woman sitting in the driver's seat, that it was a female with long hair, and that she had her hands on the 10 and 2 o'clock of the steering wheel. Now, firstly, I'll say that that's a little bit relevant in the sense that if you are, as per the prosecution's theory, sitting in a car arguing with your partner, personally, I don't think my partner has her hands at the 10 and 2 of the steering wheel. Maybe the 10 and 2 of my neck, but not the 10 and 2 of the steering wheel. To me, if Karen Reed is sitting out there with her hands on the 10 to 2, that sounds like a woman who's waiting and pissed off that her partner has not come out yet. She's ready to drive away because she's just waiting for it. She's waiting for him to test her one more time. If that motherfucker doesn't get out here in one more minute, I'm driving the hell away from here. And Ryan Nagel, who's the only person who gave testimony that I believe unconditionally, Ryan Nagel says, I didn't see anyone else in that car. Now, I debated a guy earlier today, And he claims the fact that Ryan Nagel didn't see John O'Keefe in the car doesn't mean anything. Well, I disagree. And I disagree for a number of reasons. One reason I disagree is due to the tinted windows. Because the tinted windows mean that the only way that they could have seen inside of that car was as they were driving past the driver window. Because you can't have seen her hair through the back windows because it's tinted. And when you think about the angle at which he must have had in order to see into that car while also watching his sister go into the house, then you start to realize that looking at this image right here, if Karen Reed is parked right there, he was parked back at the mailbox to the far right. He agrees that they tightly passed her, meaning there were only a couple of feet between their two cars as they passed. Look at that angle. For him to be looking at the sister going in through door number 2, he is looking directly into that cab. 100% he's looking directly in. Now, this gives you some idea of what the angle would have been, because this is only about 3 feet to the right. And from here, you can't see shit. You can't see shit, right? And it's only as you get closer and closer to the actual car that you would have been able to see a woman. To me, this photo is the best one that I could come up with. The windows are tinted except for the driver's seat and the passenger seat. Right? So this is her car. This is where her car was parked as Ryan Nagel drove past the car. This is where he said, I was looking back at my sister, so that's why I was looking through the car to keep an eye on my sister. So as he's driving by, remember, it's all pitch dark outside, but the inside of that cab is lit up. How are you not going to see a 6'2" man, 6'2" man, 220 pounds, sitting right beside Karen Reed? You are at the exact same height, because it's a Ford 150. They have the same lift. He's not higher. He's not lower. He would have been seeing right through that with that car as he drove by. I don't think he can claim to have seen Karen Reed and also have not seen John O'Keefe if John O'Keefe was actually in there. By the way, I'm really proud of these specific images. I had to watch a number of TV clips in order to be able to get this specific view, because to me, the Ryan Nagel testimony is so huge and it's overlooked by the defense. I don't think the defense really focuses on Ryan Nagel. Ryan Nagel literally says, we drove by her at 12:29, which is when she would have just about left. And at that time, they say the interior dome light is on. She was facing forward. That was another thing he said. She was facing forward and her hands were on the 10 and 2. How do you not see John in that situation? So now we're at 12:29, right? Let's go back to the prosecution's timeline, right? At 12:29:33, it says truck leaves 5 minutes after arrival, Ryan Nagel. What they mean by truck, they're referring to an F-150. The prosecutor says, we didn't move because his healthcare data isn't moving. The battery temperature on his phone is 77 degrees. Okay? Now, there's something missing from this timeline that we'll talk about in a moment. But what's really important now is at 12:31, Jen McCabe texts John, "Pull behind me." This is where it all starts going to hell. I'm going to go through the prosecution's timeline, and I'm going to explain why everything Jen McCabe does after this time makes almost no sense whatsoever. But I will give you a heads up on the Bluetooth data. We know that John's Bluetooth disconnected from Karen's car at, ready for this? 12:30. Now, we don't have the number of seconds yet. I really want to know, was it 12:30 and 59 seconds? Or 12:30 and 1 second? Because those seconds mean a lot. Now, I've looked at a number of recreations, not for this unaliving. I haven't seen anyone do one for this unaliving. But from what I have been able to determine, the options for that Bluetooth, John's Bluetooth disconnecting from Karen Reed's car, are that A, he disconnected the Bluetooth, manually disconnected the Bluetooth. There's no evidence of that, and I think that's unlikely in my opinion. B, is that distance automatically disconnected the Bluetooth, which means either he walked away or she drove away. And I'm of the opinion that the Bluetooth disconnecting at 12:30 is her driving away, putting distance between her and John. And why that's important is the Bluetooth only disconnects in a car like that when the car is at least half a block away, but could be as many as 2 blocks away, which means there's actual data that strongly suggests she left at 12:30 or earlier. Yet, we see at 12:31, Jen McCabe texts John and says, "Pull behind me." If Karen's already gone, why is Jen doing that? Because Jen also testified that when she said, "Pull behind me," she claims that she saw that she was still outside. Karen Reed was still outside. Now, the next data says between 11:56 and 12:32, John begins to move. He has 30 seconds before he falls. He gets out of Lexus, and in that 20 seconds, he looks at his phone and his text from Jen McCabe. So at 12:31:47, that's when they claim that he got out a Lexus. The battery starts to get cold by 12:32. At 12:33, Karen already calls John after leaving Fairview. Really process that. The prosecution will have you believe Karen just intentionally unalived her boyfriend due to a fight. But Karen calls John 3 minutes after that. At 12:36, Karen calls John and leaves a voicemail saying, "I effing hate you." And that's where the prosecution will say that she was super drunk, but she was super aware and very, very smart. So she decided to unalive her boyfriend and then start leaving angry messages on his phone to make it look like she didn't think he was unalived. I think that's weird. The prosecution says at 12:36, Karen is calling to curse out her boyfriend to cover up for the fact that he just unalived her. Wouldn't you call and leave a voicemail saying, "Hey, honey, let me know when you want me to pick you up later on. Love you. Bye." Wouldn't you do that? Or, doesn't it make more sense that your boyfriend went into the house, promised you that he would come right back out again, ignored your phone call, you got angry and you drove off, and when you got home, you called your boyfriend and cursed him out? What makes more sense? I swear the prosecution doesn't know women are dating. After 12:36, the battery starts to fade. The battery power starts to fade a lot. And hang on, I gotta just, sorry for one moment, guys. By 12:45, the battery temperature is at 61 degrees, which is really important. At 12:53, it's down to 60 degrees. Karen leaves another voice message at 1 a.m. Battery temperature is 55 degrees. Karen calls her mom at 1:14, likely to bitch about John, in my opinion. This is the Commonwealth's timeline. Let me get your comments back on again. I know you guys are impatient. Now, let's talk about a little bit more information about this timeline. Jennifer McCabe. At around about 12:21 to 12, around about 12:21, Waze says that they arrived at the house. However, the Waze data was off by 3 minutes. So they arrived at the house at 12:24. Based upon John's Apple data, John took 80 steps at around about 12:21 to 12:24, and John traveled 3 floors at 12:22 to 12:24. Now, by what's her name? By Karen's testimony, that would make sense. By Karen's testimony, John got out of the car. John walked up to the house, and John disappeared forever. And she would have claimed that that happened at right around about 12:24. And coincidentally, at 12:24, we have Apple data on John's phone showing him walk 80 steps and him traveling 3 floors, which may have been him going up and down the basement. It could have been, remember he was checking in on something? It could have been, and my theory is, if we go back to the floor plan, because those 3 floors are meaningful, in my opinion. To me, he said that he was going to run in and come back out again. It makes sense to me that he ran into number 1, the door, number 1, the main door where it says number 1. Actually, hang on, right there. Number 1, walked in the main door. The boys are down in the basement, so he goes to the staircase where it says A. He goes down 1 flight of stairs, goes into the basement, into the exercise room, doesn't see anyone, and runs back upstairs again. Or maybe as he's getting to the top, that's your 3 flights. The 3 flights maybe just be those 2 flights. It could also be that as he gets to the top of the staircase, he's called back down again. But it's too coincidental. Like, it's way too coincidental that he walks 80 feet, which is the same distance as the flagpole to the doorway, and he travels about 3 floors at the same time that Karen says he arrived there. I think that's weird. Let's go back to the timeline. Pardon me. So, at 12:29, Jen McCabe calls John. Now, at 12:29:44, let me be clear. In my opinion, Karen Reed had to be driving away at that point, or already gone. And so, why is Jen calling John? What we know then is a few seconds later, John O'Keefe's phone disconnects from the Lexus. At 12:31, Jen McCabe texts John, "Hello." At 12:31 to 12:32, John O'Keefe takes another 36 steps. That's 25 meters, 82 feet. And at 12:36, Karen's phone connects to John's Wi-Fi back at his house, bro. Let's go back to the maps. Remember Waterfall Bar, bottom left-hand corner. She drove from Waterfall Bar to 34 Fairview in the top left-hand corner. Ordinarily, that's a 6-minute trip. It should have taken them 6 minutes. Oh, pardon me. That's a 5-minute trip. It should have taken her 5 minutes, but there's a lot of evidence to suggest that she left at 12:14 and arrived at 12:24. That a 5-minute trip took her 10 minutes, which I don't think is implausible when there's snow on the ground and there's flurries and you're drunk. You're going to be driving slow. So we know that at 12:36, her phone is connecting to John's home in the bottom right-hand corner. John's home, where it says One Meadow Avenue, John's home is 6 minutes away from 36 Fairview. Put that into context. Now, the prosecution and the people who say that Karen Reed did it, they all maintain that necessarily Karen Reed must have sped home at twice the speed limit. Because that's the only way they can explain it. Because she had to have been there until at least 12:33, right? Because otherwise, how do you explain what happened with John? But I think it makes much more sense that if she checks into the Wi-Fi at John's house at exactly 12:36, that it's highly likely that she left 6 minutes earlier or more. Yet, here we have John O'Keefe walking around at 12:31 to 12:32, taking 36 steps. That's not possible. The head wound that he received rendered him unconscious. So if he was unalived by her, the prosecution has to claim that he was unalived after 12:32 and that she sped home. Now we're going to ignore the missing library footage. There's so many details in this that you just can't talk about everything at once. But look at the next text message, bro. This is where the idea of this being a conspiracy starts to really feel real. I have a very hard time believing that they unalived this man and within 10 minutes had formulated a conspiracy theory. I find that almost unbelievable. Yet, I cannot explain the shit that's about to come out of Jen McCabe's mouth. Because Jen McCabe at 12:40 texts John O'Keefe, pull up behind me. Now, Jen McCabe will claim that and this is really important. Look at 12:31, hello, and look at 12:40, pull up behind me. Those would seem to be as though she's talking to someone in a car who's not yet entered. I'm not as certain about that. Hello could be that she knows that he entered the house and that she's feeling, I don't know, neglected. Hello, McFly, hello. And pull up behind me, yeah, ordinarily would mean pull up behind me. But why would she mean that in this context? Karen has been outside. Jen McCabe testified that she was watching Karen Reed outside from 12:24 on. Jennifer McCabe said that she saw Karen Reed pull up at around about 12:24. So Jen McCabe knows Karen Reed's outside. So why is she saying pull up behind me? Why do you have to pull up? Why do you have to pull in? There's no reason to. So it is conceivable to me that when Jen McCabe is saying pull up behind me, it could be more socially, not from a driving direction standpoint, but like when you come up from upstairs, pull up behind me or pull up a seat behind me. I don't know. But it doesn't make any sense to me that she's giving driving directions. Now at 12:40, I want to be super clear. We know for a fact that Karen is about to make a voicemail. It happens at 12:42. At 12:42, there's literally a voicemail on John's phone that places Karen in John's garage. There's no doubt that Karen is in John's garage when she leaves the voicemail at 12:42. This is where Jennifer McCabe becomes super sus. Or not super sus. This is where Jennifer McCabe either becomes a murderer or complicit in murder. Because it is indisputable that at 12:42, Karen Reed is in the garage of One Meadow Avenue, which is a full 6 minutes away. Indisputable. Yet we know for a fact, 2 minutes before that, Jen McCabe says, "Pull up behind me," and Jen McCabe testified that she saw Karen pull the car from in front of the driveway to the left side of the property. She could not have seen that because Karen Reed was not outside at 12:40. And at 12:45, Jen McCabe texts John O'Keefe, "Hello?" And Jen McCabe testifies that she saw Karen Reed drive away at 12:45, when we know that that Karen Reed is in the garage 3 minutes prior. This is a state court. So Jen McCabe's just a liar. Now, you can lie intentionally or unintentionally. She may be someone who's just very confident in her wrong testimony. But why remain so absolutely confident when you are being confronted with conflicting data? Because at 12:18, that's when John O'Keefe calls Jen McCabe back, and it's believed it's because they were a little bit lost. There was no sexual relationship between Jen McCabe and John O'Keefe, although she may have fancied him. At 12:27, Jen McCabe, you already saw this, said here. At 12:29, that's the other thing I forgot to point out. At 12:29, not only did Jennifer McCabe call John O'Keefe answered the call. It was like 8-second call. Jennifer McCabe claims he didn't answer the call. At 12:31, McCabe texts, "Pull behind me." 12:40, "Hello." 12:42, "Where are you?" 12:45, "Hello." Now looking at the iPhone data showed that starting at around about an hour, there's 170 steps taken. We know he's in a car at 12:21, right? So if he's in a car at 12:21, what do you all think the 170 implies? Because to me, that's him walking from the bar to his car. Because at 12:11, we know 1 minute later, the Lexus's ignition lights up. So to me, it makes sense. The entry that says 12:11, that is him walking 170 steps to get into his car. The next start end date is 12:21 and 10 seconds. And this is the second entry. And the end time is 12:24:22. That to me makes sense to be John getting out of the car and walking up to the house. And it's 80 steps, which would have been enough to get him into the house. Now, what's more interesting is the third entry. John should be dead by that time, according to the prosecution's theory. Or not according to the prosecution's theory. If you accept what the prosecutors are claiming, which is that Karen Reed did it, given the fact we know that Karen Reed is back at One Meadow Avenue at 12:36, that means that she likely left the house at 12:29, 12:30 at the latest. So why is John still walking around at 12:31, 56 seconds? And then the fourth entry is when his body was found. And nobody knows who had his phone for all that time, by the way. And it's really important because it was not Karen Reed. And we know that there was something deleted. Like, there's so much lore that it's so hard for me to go into each part of it. But there was ring footage. The ring footage was not at 34 Fairview, although I guarantee you there was footage. The ring footage was back at One Meadow Avenue. There is ring footage of Karen Reed leaving at 6 a.m. to go find John. The ring footage of her arriving home at 12:30 is not there. It was deleted. The question is, who deleted it? She only had a tiny opportunity of time to delete it, whereas whoever had this phone had all that opportunity to delete that one. And the reason why that ring footage matters is A, it would show exactly what time she got home. But B, it would show if she's missing a tail light. And that has been a critical issue, that they have not been able to show footage of her missing a tail light. Yet we know at 5 or 6 when she wakes up, she absolutely backs her right tail light into another car. So whoever had this phone during this period of time has never been identified. And they had one of the two ways to access that data. It's through his phone and through his computer. And Karen Reed had access to his computer for exactly 15 minutes. So, what are some of the other things I was going to share? Oh, this is another big one in my opinion. I hate that so many of the police officer shots are like that. So many of the exhibits from that night, they didn't take great photographs at all, are taken from this angle. And I think this leads people to think, even the jury to think, even though the jury will be informed otherwise, I think that it makes it feel as though the body was found closer to the fire hydrant. And even if it's not closer to the fire hydrant, it makes it look like the body was found really far away from the house. Which is why, because I love you all so much, I wanted to show you what it would really look like. The left-hand side is the fire hydrant. The flagpole is the flagpole right there. His body was found not only between the flagpole and the car, his body was found to the right of the flagpole. So rather than these images, which make it seem like if you were inside the house, gosh, how could you know what was going on? The reality is, look at the flagpole, look at the house. It was 20 feet away. It happened right on their lawn. And the important part is the bedrooms. To me, this is really important, and we'll talk about it more so in a little bit as to why. But remember the bedroom situation. We've got doorway, the main doorway, but look at D, top left. D, as a reminder, is the primary bedroom. And so it means that John lay outside, dying, on the lawn, directly outside the house, pretty much right in front of, where right there. Or a little bit more to the left, to be fair. But like right in front of the house. Now, there's a lot of issues. I don't like how they make the lawn look so big. It's not big. He was found. Oh, all right. See where that guy's finger is? That's actually perfect. That is exactly where John was found. So John's body was found very clearly in view of all the windows, very clearly in view of the two doors, meaning anyone walking out of those two doors should have been able to see his body. And one of the reasons why it would have been really easy to see his body would have been the snowfall. He was wearing dark clothing, and at 1:30 a.m., look at how little snow was on the ground. So what you have is a scattering of snow with a dark colored clothing laying on top of it. That would be pretty obvious to spot, would it not be? Now, as it snowed more, absolutely the body is going to get covered. No doubt. I'm not disputing that. But what we know is that if the prosecution is correct, which they're not, if she clipped him and he fell down at the beginning of a snowstorm, we know that from 12:30 until 1:15 that he would have been very, very visible to anyone who looked out the door, right? So why is it and how is it possible that at 12:45 Jen McCabe claims she is still at the front door and is still looking out the window and is still looking at the position where the car would have been, yet Jen McCabe doesn't see a body? From 12:24 to 12:45, she is in the foyer almost the entire time. And the foyer, as a reminder, is like an isolated area away from the party. The foyer is the area between number 1 and A. And she's at the front door. I don't know why she's at the front door. She could have been at any of the windows. But she said that she was in the foyer waiting for John for 20 minutes. Makes no sense. You know what makes less sense? Brian fucking Higgins. Brian Higgins is Boston PD. Brian Higgins, and this is Karen Reed, were flirting with each other. Very overtly flirting with each other. To the point where they kissed. Literally just weeks before this happened. In the bar, there is footage that I think shows Brian Higgins getting angry and being held back. As for why or from whom, you cannot tell. But Brian looked heated when he was in that bar. What we do know is that they allege Brian left the house at 12:30. That is so important because they said that because they thought that they were going to be able to make this look like the accident happened at what time? 12:45. And the 12:45, because whatever happened in that house, they wanted to make it look like it happened later. They said that he left around 12:30, right? And we know from his testimony that he claims he was parked. Let me see if I can get a good picture of it. Great. If John's body is the X, everyone look at the X. That's where John is. Now look at number 5 in the far right-hand corner. That is where Brian Higgins was. We know that from 12:30 to 1 o'clock, Brian Higgins claims that he got into his car, which is where number 5 was. And let me be clear, he was not in the driveway. He would have been parked facing directly where the body is. Understand? Would have been facing directly where the body is. He would have, what's the first thing he would have done? Turn on the ignition and then turn on his headlights. So why is it when Brian Higgins got into his car and turned on his headlights, why didn't he see his friend John O'Keefe lying on the ground with a light smattering of snow on top of his body? This would have been the worst case scenario. This would have been the likely scenario. He likely would have had hardly any snow at all. That's the worst case he would have had. How do you not notice that? How do you not notice a body lying there as you're pulling away? And in case you're confused about what that would actually look like, right? That's exactly what it looks like. I took the effort. This is a picture driving 34 Fairview at nighttime. You'll notice that this person drove hugging the median, which would have given less light to the right. They did this on purpose. Realistically, Brian Higgins' car would have been on the side of the road because he was pulled over and he was parked. So he would have lit John up. Also, this car is one car length behind the back of Brian Higgins' car. So Brian Higgins' back tire would have been where the red line begins. He would have lit that body up. And yet, he saw nothing. Now, Brian Higgins, to me, is very likely to have been involved in this. Because in the middle of a blizzard, late at night, drunk as a skunk, Brian Higgins at 1:20 decides to go to his police station. Why would you do that? Brian Higgins the next day spends all day in the police station. Brian Higgins doesn't only stay all day in the police station, he is on record going into the Sally Port where they parked Karen Reed's car. So they confiscated her car and it was parked in the Sally Port by 4 p.m., roughly, the day that he was found dead. Guess who was found going into the Sally Port between 4 to 5 p.m.? Brian Higgins. Guess what time was the first time ever broken parts of a taillight were found scattered around the scene? Anyone got a guess? The first bits of taillights were found at approximately 5:30 p.m. Not a single piece of the taillight was found until the car was in the property of the cops and Brian Higgins had access directly with that car. Brian Higgins, who was trying to have an affair with the girlfriend of the deceased. Crazy, just absolutely crazy. Now, Brian Higgins is not the only one who drove home that night. Multiple of the party members drove by, and not a single one of them, until most recently, testified to seeing a damn thing. Not a single one of them. Yeah, to follow up with what Lorian just said, Brian Higgins also didn't just give away his phone. He destroyed his phone and left it in a disposal site on a military base. So it would be destroyed, destroyed, destroyed. And guess who else did that? What's the name of Albert? Not Colin Albert. What's the name of the owner of the house? I can't remember, but the Brian Albert, is it? I don't remember. But the owner of the house, Albert, he also destroyed his phone right before both men were going to receive a subpoena for their phones. A little bit of a quinky dink there. So the only last thing I will bring up is probably the thing the defense should focus on the most, which is the injuries. There are a lot of injuries. By the way, this is an overview map for you guys to see it. If you look where the truck, the F-150 car is parked, did y'all see that? It says Ryan Nagel, Richie, Heather, Julie Nagel, top right-hand corner. And then if you look in front of that, you see Karen's SUV. So this gives you an overview sort of from a sky view. The injuries John O'Keefe suffered are as follows. First, to point out, there are literally no injuries anywhere from his chest down. Not a single injury. No bump, no bruise, no contusion, no cracked ribs, no broken bones. From his neck down, the only injuries he has are on the back of his hands. I want you to really think about that. The back of his hands, which you would ordinarily use while fighting, and on the front of his face, he has a cut above his eye, and he also has a giant black eye. In addition, the thing that unalived him is a giant gash on the back of his head. And it is believed, but it's not certain, that the gash and the bruise on the front and the cut on the front, the black eye on the front and the cut on the front, are all one injury. And what I mean by that is, what is believed is that he was hit in the front of his face. He fell back, he hit something on his head that cracked his head open. And sometimes when you have a fracture in your skull, it creates pressure, and that pressure seeks a way out, but often it's not through the place where you're injured. And so often when you get cracked on the back of the head, you will get bruised eyes. That's not uncommon. So it is believed that his black eye was actually due to the blood pressure from inside of his head after being cracked from behind. The most interesting injuries he had, and look, I'm sorry, if you guys need a trigger warning for this, I don't know what to tell you, but trigger warning, trigger warning. I did make this as TikTok friendly as possible. I'm not going to be keeping this up, okay? Because this is what got my live bananaed last time. Although I have done some editing. So everyone get a screenshot of this now. That's his arm. On the left-hand side, that's a photo of the taillight. The prosecutor will tell you that the taillight did those injuries to his arm. Whereas a lot of people believe that Chloe the dog, who lived inside the residence, is responsible for those scratch marks and or bite marks. You'll notice I broke it into 5 zones, A, B, C, D, E. The really important things I want to point out is notice that all of the injuries are parallel to one another. Also notice, however, that the distance between the parallel scratches varies. Look at the distance between A, then look at the distance between B. That's weird. Then look at the fact that A and B are 2 scratches. Now go over to E, and if you zoom in, it's 4 scratches. So, look, you'll notice that those go from the middle of his arm down to near his wrist. Explain to me how a tail light, first of all, explain to me how you break a tail light at 25 miles an hour. Explain to me how a tail light leaves those marks on your body. Explain to me how it is you then get spun around 25 feet in the air. Explain to me how it is you then somehow get cracked on the front of your head, but also hit the ground so hard that you crack your head on a snowy lawn? Doesn't make sense. Now, with regard to Chloe the dog just happened to be rehomed months after this incident. And Chloe was rehomed due to the fact that Chloe was known to bite and scratch neighbors. As for DNA testing, they didn't take any DNA of the arm, but they took DNA of the shirt, and it had pig DNA, which some people say is due to pig treats fed to Chloe, but I think that's a stretch. I think it's much more likely he had bacon for breakfast. But the prosecution's theory is just, it's wild, in my opinion. Now, you have to be humble and remind yourself you're not a doctor. I don't know what dog bites look like. I don't know what taillight injuries look like. I know I've been hit by a car. I know I didn't look like that afterwards. I know that when I think about a dog attacking me, it looks kind of like that. But realistically, I'm not an expert. But there's nothing about that arm injury, to me, that looks like that was done by a car. And I think it's weird that the theory is he was hit forcibly by the car going 25 miles an hour, yet his arm was not bruised in any way. And he had no broken bones in any way. And he had no fractures in any way. But it was hard enough to demolish a taillight? And there's the only other injury on the car. Never mind John O'Keefe. The car has hardly any damage at all. It has a broken taillight. And it also has a tiny little ding, I guess you would call it. Almost like someone threw a stone at it. And their allegation is that John O'Keefe went home from the Waterfall bar with a glass from the bar, which he did. I think that's uncontested. There's video of him walking out of the bar with it in his hand. And I think that the prosecution alleges that glass is what makes contact with the car and leaves a ding in the car. Which is really? Because I don't understand that. Because that would mean that for you to leave a ding on the car, you would have had to been holding that glass pretty forcibly. Because the moment the car hits you, you're going to move, right? You're going to move with the car. It's only going to leave a ding if you don't move. But I'm pretty confident a car versus a glass, the car's going to win. So I don't really understand how a glass would cause that ding. But there's no other injury at all to the car. And so looking at the injuries, which I'll show again very briefly, and I'm going to give you the color image for 2 seconds. Ready? I'm going to give you a countdown, so you got 2 seconds to take a screenshot. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. My issue is this. I took this to show you where that guy there, I think is around about 5'10" on the left. Maybe just a little bit, around about 5'10". Now he is slightly up on the curb, right? But look at his elbow. His elbow is already above the tail light. So how is it your entire arm goes into the taillight? I don't get it. And then, like, if you get your whole arm in the taillight, why didn't bits of his flesh rip off and get onto the actual taillight or into the enclosure? I don't understand that either. I also don't understand how does me getting my arm ripped apart or shredded by that then lead to me having a crack on my eye and a giant gash on the back of my head. Corey, when you asked did they test the tail lights, they pieced them all together like a map, and it did piece together, if that's what you mean. So there's a lot more to all of this. But this was just sort of like my taster test. Let me go through all the slides to make sure I addressed each of the slides that I'd created. This, by the way, is again just sort of making the point that in order for you to see someone in that car, you... Oh, this is an interesting photo because this is the one photo that does exist that does suggest that the tail light was completely broken before it got to Canton PD. And it's somewhat compelling. This is a photo. This is a photo of Karen Reed's car parked before Canton PD takes ownership of it. And if you look on the right-hand side, look at the yellow arrow I have pointing down on the right-hand side. You can see that there does appear to be something different about the taillight there. Compare the right side to the left side. And I think it's very fair to say that that could be indicating on the right-hand side a complete absence of a taillight. It could be. The thing that I don't know catches my attention though is not only that it's a bad picture, but that it could very well be just simply frost on that side of the car. And part of the reason why I think there may be distortion in the picture and or extra frost is if you look underneath where the taillight should be and you see the dark band of the car again, you'll notice that directly underneath the taillight, directly underneath, it's discolored, which suggests that that whole part of the picture is discolored in some way. So there's something about that picture that doesn't really sit well with me. Let me see what else. I do like this picture a lot for people to really understand again that the dude was literally just right where that finger is. No distance from the door. Oh, you want to hear something else sus? The owner of the house, who is a cop, is in the primary bedroom, which is the two windows in the top left-hand corner. When John O'Keefe, his good friend, is found unalived on the lawn outside, when multiple police cars pull up, when an ambulance pulls up, the cop who's inside the house never comes outside. Not once. You tell me that if you found out that your friend is unalived on your lawn, and I don't care if you're a cop, you're telling me you're not coming outside right away? All right, I just got a violation warning, so I may have to restart. Let me just see if there's anything else. Just making sure I went through all of these things with you. Yeah, all right, I did. All right, cool. So I'm going to restart. And if anyone wants to join at that point, I would love to have opposition join. So I'm going to restart. I'll be back in 2 seconds. Anything? Hi, Irish's pen. So I'm going to wait a few minutes to see if we can get some folk in and see if we can get some opposition to join. Hey, Kali. Because I really genuinely am curious to see what people are thinking in regard to why they think she is guilty. I will admit, the idea of a conspiracy is wild. Although I think it depends on how deep you think the conspiracy goes. If you think the conspiracy is everyone in the house, I think that is untenable. That is too many people. And I think that some people have testified truthfully. One of the people who testified truthfully, in my opinion, is Ryan Nagel. Yeah, I know everyone keeps saying if you knew cops or military better, it wouldn't be that wild. I don't disbelieve that if this was all everyone. Did you see live chat? No, Jeannie. What happened in live chat? Shanti. Oh, he's live right now? Wait, if he's live right now, I kind of want to go watch. Hold on a second. I know, but if I stream it, I'm just going to be accused of drama. But gosh darn it. Is me being a drama queen really anything I can deny at this point? All right, give me a moment.
Let's discuss this video for a minute because
I never missed a visit with my children. When my children were two for me,
shit.
I never missed a visit. Ever. Ever.
So I'm not going to stream Jonty in terms of like his face and his live, But
Free our people from the...
sure, let's listen in.
Whatever. Cornball. Goodbye.
I thought he'd moved on. I'm actually surprised.
Like, I'm sick of this, bro. I'm real sick of this. Where the hell is this man at?
Oh, he's not going to show.
I'm tired. Why is Quinn speaking on your situation? Ask him, because I have no idea what made him freaking made that video unprovoked for what. I have no idea.
We all know why.
I have no idea. But all I know is if he's in the DFW, I don't care what area he's in. Don't dox him, baby. Don't dox him. Don't dox him. Don't dox him. No doxing. Nah, we're not gonna dox this man. Bro, like, oh my God. My
All right.
troll pages, user, whatever, block them out of this live.
All right, so let me bring everyone up to speed. Give me one moment.
I don't have time for them. I don't have time for them.
So here's the news. There's a guy named Quinn Pratt who went after a creator named Kendra. And I did some research on Quinn, and I found out that he and his brother were accused in court documents of molesting a 7-year-old child and then bullying that child once that child spoke up asking for help. That he also was accused in court documents of rape, and that he was also accused in court documents of beating up his pregnant wife. Quinn, in my opinion, likes to go around and performatively pretend he cares about people, but he's a sociopath. Or not a sociopath, just a scumbag. And today he made a video on Jaunty. If you don't know Jaunty, he goes by DJ Soulchild. But if you search for King Jaunty, I think it's King Jaunty 1989, it'll come right up. And basically, Quinn made a video saying that Jaunty needs to be called out because he has abuse charges pertaining to his kids. Now, there was a time where Jaunty thought I was going after him over those charges, which caused a whole big issue between Jaunty and I originally. But then I decided to look into the charges. And I have told Jaunty that, frankly, after looking into the charges, from what I know about the court system, from my perspective, it does look as though he was shook down to take a deal and that the prosecutor did not believe the evidence was there and that there were other parties that were either possibly or likely to be guilty. And from my perspective, if people have got an issue with Jaunty for that, you can have an issue with Jaunty for that. It's not I don't have an issue with it. After looking into the case, I just don't. And so Quinn decided to go try to pretend that he cares about children by going after Jaunty. And so Jaunty somehow learned about what Quinn had done. I don't know how he found out. He just found out. And so I guess Jaunty is calling out Quinn, which he should do. And so we're just listening in right now.
I'm not in the mood. And this is the second white man who's conservative with a large following I have called out in this live in real time, and they're not coming. I don't understand why y'all just sit here and make videos and talk ish about me in comment sections. And then when I go on live and I'm standing on business, you guys don't come up and talk.
Yeah, someone said in the comments he'll never show. He won't show. And mods, be real careful in the comments. Be overly blocking. I don't want anyone talking shit about Jaunty, especially in this situation at all. I don't want anyone doing anything inappropriate in the comments. So please keep an eye on that.
But it don't look like you follow me anymore, so I don't know what you're doing here. because he knows what he did was straight up wrong. What he did was foul, bro. Like, to make that video, and then Kelly, you've been literally rocking with me for 5 years, sis. Have I not been consistent with the same thing I've been saying? I've been consistent as hell.
I don't know if this is boring for you guys or not, but I find it interesting. Brussels, I don't think it's about having no room to talk. I think, for example, that if you have done something bad and you have made amends and shown that you don't ascribe to that, I'm okay with you calling that out. I am. It's more so, do any of us think that Quinn cares about kids? No.
Weaponizing, right? The record that bothers
Yes,
me.
Lena.
You know what bothers me more than anything? The fact that you guys don't even realize every time y'all do this, you re-traumatizing my child, bro. Who literally is active on TikTok and sees this shit every 5 seconds. You don't think his friends see this shit? You don't think that?
That's my point, Brussels. Like, I think Quinn is an evil person who has no regard for other people.
My opinion about a story that's going on all over the world.
Quinn pretended that he was just doing this because he cares about kids. But the reality is that Jonty came out and made a controversial statement. He said, and he said it a bit more flippantly than I think he meant it. What I think he was trying to say was that if any white guy steps to him, he will have no problem doing what Carmelo did and poking that person. And I understand why when people hear that, they'd be like, what the hell are you talking about? Because that's like a severe reaction. But I also get it, very much so. Like, I'm not opining on the whole thing that happened with Carmelo. I'm not going to be doing lives on it and stuff. But to me, it's really, I don't think anyone should have been unalived in that situation. But I also I think from my perspective, I don't see intent to unalive either. And more importantly, why were two kids who were 6 foot plus, 220 pounds, telling a scrawny kid, get the hell out of the tent when it's pouring rain? Why were you doing that? Like, I just think, like, when I was in high school, would I have done that? No, of course I wouldn't have done that. And that doesn't mean they deserve it. But I think what it does imply is that there was something that happened that could have been understandable, if that makes sense. So, I don't know. My opinion on it is that I think the loss of life is tragic. I think the villainization of Carmelo is entirely unnecessary and is probably naive, in my opinion. And so Jonty was basically making the point, hey, we're kind of tired of having white people intimidate us. We are kind of tired of having white people thinking that they could push us around. So if a white guy tries to push me around, I'm going to poke him. And it became a big thing on TikTok last week or 2 weeks ago. Was it 2 weeks ago? Maybe last week. Where he was getting videos taken down and all this kind of stuff. And personally, I mean, I understood what his point was. I think people were framing it like this guy just wants to go around poking white guys. That's not what I thought it was. And so I believe that Quinn made his video on Jonty because Quinn is like one of those sharks that circle people when they think that they're weak. And I think that he thought Jonty was weak. And he thought he would dogpile and look like the hero. That's what I think happened. And Jonty is not that. And I think it was a very, very, very rude awakening for Quinn. What's up, Brussels?
I think,
I think.
holy
Holy
shit, that's a
shit,
big
that's a big
echo.
echo.
Why is no one talking about the actual charge? The charge should never been murdered.
Sorry, I don't actually want to talk about the case. Go ahead, Brussels.
What was I gonna say?
I don't know.
That was very rude, all UK news. I have a concussion, okay? It's gonna take me like 4 minutes to remember what I wanted to say.
All right, well, in the meantime, all you news is
All you
back up.
news is back up.
Bro, you
Bro,
have
you
an
have an
echo.
echo.
Wait, hang on.
Wait, hang on.
No,
No,
Brussels, use the
Brussels,
echo.
use the echo. Am I echoing?
I don't
I
think
don't
so.
think so.
Oh, yeah, you
Oh,
are.
yeah, you are.
So
So
just
just
mute right
mute
now.
right now.
And now I
And
want
now
you
I
to
want you
flip
to
to
flip
another
to
app
another
and then
app
come
and then
back
come
in.
back again. Can you hear me?
Yeah, can you
Yeah,
hear what
can
I
you hear
just
what I
said?
just said? Yeah.
Mute
Mute
yourself right
yourself.
now. Now, hop into another app and then come back again. Just
Just
exit.
exit.
No,
Shut
you're
up,
not.
you fake Irish American twat, you fucking patty, you fake twatty, patty twat.
Look, you're so fucking stupid. You don't even know how to unecho
You fake
yourself.
patty twat,
Listen, you moron. Can you do this for me?
fake patty.
And then you can have an insult off with me. The people in here are very happy to have you try to insult me, but you have an echo. You
Fake
old
patty twat.
irrelevant. You old irrelevant
Patty.
tortoise. What I want you to do is exit the app and then come back again, and then you can try to match wits with me. Okay?
Fake patty twat. You're a fake patty.
Are you not listening, you moron?
Fake patty.
You wait. Is it fixed?
Is it fixed? You fake patty
It's not
twat.
fixed.
It's not fixed.
All right, you boomer bitch.
Patty.
I'll say it again. Exit the app and then come back, and then we can insult each other. I'm more than happy to do that.
Ireland.
Not with an exit.
Exit Ireland. Exit.
Not with an echo.
Fake.
All right, we're just gonna
Fake
stop
twat.
you
You fake.
because you're being a little baby in the comments. Just be a baby in the comments because that's all you can handle.
I remember what I was gonna say.
No, that was crazy.
What?
That was insane. That was insane.
Wynn definitely thought that Shanti was a weak link, and that's insane. But also, can I say something super problematic about Quinn that none of you get to clock me for because I have a brain injury?
Yeah, I'm gonna exit the app while you say it.
Or because I have a brain injury.
Yeah, I'm gonna exit the app while you say it.
Have any of you guys seen his new veneers? Bro was talking in that video like, excuse my speech, I got new veneers. Bruh.
Oh, that's not problematic.
Well, it was what was going to come up next. Bro should have gone to Turkey, and it looks like he went to Tijuana.
See, now I'm gonna be labeled as anti-Mexican, Brussels.
Well, all I'm saying is that he has the intellectual capacity to very easily get those T words confused. And honestly, the way he spoke to Jonty and the anti-blackness that was coming off of him, maybe he should have waited. Maybe he should have delayed those veneers a little bit.
And I told him, I was like, I'm not touching that. I don't want to do it.
Oh my God, your echo is so bad.
And then I see him in the comment sections under this video that he was supposed to delete, still talking crazy about me.
Yep.
And still got the video up now after you said you apologized for posting the video up, which is insane. So now you're playing in my face.
Yep. That's what Quinn
And you
does.
sitting here leaving that video up for money because it's over a minute long. So you literally keeping the video up to get a quick check off of my son's trauma.
Quinn Pratt 5.
That is weird as hell. That is beyond weird.
Kendra?
So now I'm getting angry.
What about Kendra?
So I made a video.
Nicole's asking who is Quinn. I was just giving a reference to Kendra and opposite Udi.
You sitting here still having that video up after you realized that you were full of shit. You